Welcome to the Rachel and Cassandra Show. Before we begin, our disclaimer. I know it sounds like Rachel and Cassandra are giving legal and financial advice, but I promise you, they're not.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
We're giving you like a fake second day, but we're recording this on the same day as the episode we just did. I'm sorry.
I literally was like, there's no way I'm not going to be able to say, like, we just took a 20-minute break from the last recording.
Yes, during which we changed our shirts. So if you're watching, you have something different to look at.
I should have like done my hair up or something.
I did. We'll wait. We'll wait while you put your hair up. While she's doing that, I will. I'm trying to get in the habit of, stating what we're up to at the beginning of every episode. So Cassandra and I are on a mission to elevate the industry of residential real estate and to inform clients things that we didn't know that we wish we had known when we bought our houses or before we were professionals. I'm a real estate agent in Southeast Michigan. I can do business in the entire state. Cassandra is a loan officer, also does business in the entire state. And, we've learned so many things over the years and run into problem themes that we deal with on a daily basis. So, we're just trying to spread the word, and knowledge is power. So on
the
that
more you
note,
know.
Cassandra's hair is now up, so we are ready to rock and roll. And our topic today is kind of not treacherous, but it's one that must be discussed carefully. And there are two parts to this. I want to talk about a document called the seller disclosure. And I also want to talk about who needs to see what when it comes to documents in a real estate transaction. And that can be, what is the word I'm looking for, Cassandra? It's not treacherous or dicey, but it's something like that. It just has to be talked about carefully.
It's a delicate.
Delicate. That's beautiful.
Because the other two sound like they're scary, and they're not. It's just delicate. There's some things I don't need to see if I can't people cannot unsee documents legally. So if you're working with somebody who has a good karmatic, works truthfully, and I can't think of the fucking word, a good goddamn person who has your fiduciary, like, we can't unsee things. If I submit it, Rachel gives me something, or you give me something as a buyer, or a seller would never give me anything. I can't unsee anything. An underwriter can't unsee things. Like,
so, and that's like the culmination of the story right there. People can't unsee the things. So as you know, these topics come out of real life situations, and I've got a couple, and I'm going to start with one really out there example that I don't know if it's ever happened to me except for this one time. But to set the stage, in a real estate deal, you have a lot of different people, and we talked about this in a prior episode, they're all working independently to get their shit done. One of those people is an insurance agent, and another one of those people is a home inspector. And I had a buyer, do their home inspection and give the entire fucking report to their insurance agent. Your insurance agent, like, this is a really out there example, but your insurance company is like charging you to replace your property, and your rates are dependent on you and where the house is and so many other things. And if your insurance agent has your home inspection that talks about this outlet that doesn't work and this step that is an inch too short and therefore is considered a trip hazard, and
or a furnace at the end of its life or something.
Furnace at the end of its life. Roof only has 5 years left. And just so you know, these are all normal things. Like, houses need upkeep. They get worn out. None of this is scary to me. But if your insurance agent sees that shit, they may change your rate, because now guess what they know? The likelihood that you're going to have a claim due to this, that, or the other thing just went up. Stuff that's not to code is like flagrant in every home inspection report, because you know what happens? Codes change. My house was built 20 years ago. There's plenty of shit in there that is not to code. If I was building the same house today, it would have to be done differently.
My house is 48 years old, and I've got a lot of windows that are not to code at a ton of windows. So my house couldn't be rebuilt as it is right now.
Yeah. So the insurance agent had no interest in or business seeing that fucking report. But the homeowner trying to help sent over the report. And
Help with an A, help.
Ultimately, that I had to advise that client to just call a different fucking insurance company. I was like, they can't unsee that. They actually work for the insurance company. Yes, trying to get you the best product that fits your scenario. But if it starts to look like they're exposing the company to a high likelihood of claims because of the condition of this house, I was going to say this shit house, but it's really not shit. It's just like a home inspection report is 37 pages of everything that's wrong with your house. It's just the nature of what that report is.
I just reviewed mine again from our purchase 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Your home inspection report?
Yes. Still haven't fixed some of the things.
Yeah.
Everything else is totally fine. All the things they suggested we replace, but whatever.
And that, so the point of this long ass story is not everybody needs to see everything, nor should they, because you could really muck up your ability to buy a house by showing documents to people who should not see them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I would say do not send anybody a document as a homeowner, a home buyer, or a seller. Do not send anybody anything unless they ask you for it. And that goes for extra bank statements or accounts or
let's talk about extra. I feel like examples are necessary because the concept is easy to wrap my head around. But if I'm buying a house and I've got my loan officer asking me for all this shit and my real estate agent sending me all this other crap to sign and then making me order these other reports, it could get really unwieldy. So let's talk about extra bank statements. I'm buying a house, Cassandra. You ask me for how many bank statements?
So most of the time, I go with a program that requires 1 month of bank statements. So
Awesome.
I'm very specific when I tell people, could I have 1 month of bank statements from the account that is being used for the transaction? Hopefully, there's one account that has enough money to close it. This is my dream scenario, and it works most of the time. What I often get,
I'm an overachiever. I'm like, I'm going to get her some statements.
Here's my retirement account. Here's my Christmas club account. Here's all these accounts. So a lot of people with
proving
online
I have
stuff.
Money.
Yes,
I have money, which I think is good.
Yeah. She said bank statements. That's all I heard. One from the one account. I am a minimalist. I want the one thing that will let me get to closing. I do not want 14 other things. I had somebody send me an extra bank statement and it was a negative balance.
So
hey, thanks for that.
Why is that bad though? If I have 4 different accounts that cumulatively show you how much money I have, or what if I go further back in time? I'm like, I'm going to give her 6.
Oh, I've had that. The more things that there are to be looked at by the underwriter, the more things that go wrong.
So why would you give it? What if I just said, here are 6 months worth of 3 different accounts. Pick the one you want. Because I'm a hotshot. I have all this money in so many places and here.
So I have not opened things that were sent to me before.
Yes, I do this
Or
too.
I will reply and say, could you please just send me the November statement for enough accounts to cover, $14,000. For the love of God, I don't need all the things. I promise you I don't.
What's wrong with all the things?
Shit goes wrong. Goes wrong. Because I have to explain deposits. There could be recurring withdrawals. I mean, you are literally opening yourself up to more documents. It becomes a snowball effect. The more you give that's unasked for, the more I need. For example, I had a realtor send me an addendum that was like, the seller is giving the price is going down by $1,500 and the seller must fix the caulking around the tub. Guess what? I'm going to hear from an underwriter
Give me proof
if I
that the
send that
tub was
along.
cocked.
I need an invoice, a work order. I need something or a reinspection showing that because it's part of the contract and because the realtors wrote it in, I need to show that that work has been done. I
So,
don't want to know that. I don't want any of that.
and I was going to kind of, talk about addenda
Oh,
specifically, but I want to go back to bank statements because I think an example is required. Let's imagine that you asked me for one bank statement in my Lake Trust account because I told you that's my checking account and that there's $10,000 in there. And you need to prove that I have $6,000 available to close, whatever. In this hypothetical scenario, I send you 3 months of bank statements as one PDF. I downloaded them all. I'm like, I'm going to just show her. Like, I have all these deposits. And last month I made, I don't know, a $5,000 cash withdrawal, and I deposited $1,000 every day in cash. Like, I'm trying to think of some weird shit that would be a red flag for you that seems completely normal to me. Now you have an underwriter who's going to look at that and be like, okay, for the month that we asked for, Rachel had one deposit and it's her paycheck. And the month before that, she has all this weird money shit going on. What's happening there? No?
yeah. You need letters of explanation. You need documentation. You have to show that. I had a woman send me her bank statement. She was applying. This was a few months ago, and there was for her a giant deposit. Like, it was a $3,000 deposit. She'd been saving cash to buy a house. She deposited it on September
Mattress
3rd.
money. This is fucking
Mattress money. So she deposited at the beginning of the month, sent me the bank statement, and I said, "Listen, I can't use that money as it stands." She's like, "What?" And I said, "It's a giant deposit. You have to source it. And because it was cash, I'm going to give you a piece of advice, like, because I can't qualify you now. You need to wait 60 days. And
seasoning the funds, people. It
you,
has to
that's
be in your
seasoning the
bank for
funds. It
X
has to
amount of
be,
time.
yeah. So what I actually advised, what my true advice was, I need you to wait about 35, 40 days, and then you can apply again. Do not give me bank statements at that point. I need you to give me bank statements from, September 4th, the day after the deposit, so I don't see the deposit, through 60 days, like up to closing. So there to there. So it's not, I won't say it's loan fraud or omission, but I will tell people the guidelines indicate this is
yes.
what's required. And I've
And-
also told realtors when it might be, take this as you will. I've also given realtors like, hey, this is what the guidelines indicate. Perhaps you can pass that along to the buyer or the seller or.
So there are a couple of things in there. One, I think mattress money is a little bit of a rabbit trail worth going down because many people
doesn't
save
exist.
cash. Well, it doesn't exist for Cassandra. So if you have
it
$10,000
does.
in cash, well, I'm going to just say, if you have $10,000 in cash sitting in a coffee can buried in your backyard that you're going to use to buy a house and you're getting ready to go buy the house, just put the fucking money in the bank and let it sit there so that it shows up that it's been there for 2 bank statements. Go ahead.
There are, I would say, don't say that's a solid rule. There are programs where you only need 30 days of bank statements. And then there are also, most loan programs allow you to deposit up to 1% of the purchase price as a cash without having to explain, or up to 50% of your normal salary as a cash deposit without having to explain.
So this just became an it depends. And of course, there's a
Of course it does. Talk with somebody.
There it is. That's what I was going to say. If you have cash, don't do anything with it until you talk to your loan officer, because you're far better to be like, hey, thinking about buying a house. I have this $10,000 cash. What should I do with it? Than you would be to just already be in the process and be, qualify for this mortgage and then make a weird deposit that you then have to source that could be troublesome. Have you ever not been able to source? Like, I remember doing a deal with you one time where a client sold a snowmobile on Facebook and had to prove the ad with the cash, right?
Yeah,
Or
you have to
get
get
your
a
mom to write a letter. To say
now you
that
got
she
to get a
gave you the
Kelly Blue Book, bill of sale, proof of ad, something like that.
Right.
I've had hay, boats.
You got to prove that
Anyway,
you sold it.
yeah. So cash deposits are freaky. Don't send extra bank statements because you're opening yourself up to more explanations.
Yes.
Another thing that shouldn't be seen, repairs that don't really affect the purchase price, that the appraiser is not calling out. I don't want to
So,
see
and
that.
let's go slow on this, because the topic of addendums to the purchase agreement this is where it gets tricky, because I can't have an addendum to the purchase agreement that I'm withholding from the lender. But the language that I use to write the addendum can make or break your deal, or make or break how smoothly it goes. And I'll give you an example. I was actually trying to pull up, I have this beautiful example of a horrible addendum that I use when I teach classes. I can't find it. But if you're an agent and you represent a buyer and you do an inspection and you find a bunch of bullshit wrong with the house, and the result of all of your negotiating back and forth is purchase price reduction of $5,000. Do not write an addendum that says seller or purchase price to be XYZ, $5,000 less due to hole in the roof and flooding in basement and buyer's willingness to accept a broken refrigerator and nobody gives a fuck why. The only piece that anybody cares about is that the purchase price changed. That's all Cassandra cares about to get you your mortgage. Mm-hmm. It's the appraiser's job to make sure that the house is safe. So if there's a leak in the roof and that's what you negotiated around, and the underwriter doesn't need to know that, because now the underwriter needs to know that the roof is not leaking anymore. I don't know. That's a terrible example.
No, I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't matter what the fuck the home inspector finds, because the appraiser will find and require the things that need to be fixed. That's it.
Thank you for
I don't
saving
give a
me
fuck.
there.
Home inspector, pink walls, gross, renegotiate. Okay. If you actually do renegotiate something like a wall color and it's part of an addendum, guess who needs to see that the fucking wall color changed? And as dumb as that sounds, it's true if you write it in there. Because if you're putting it in for itemizing what needs to be done,
it becomes a contingency.
It becomes
of the closing.
Part, yes, which means the lender has to make sure that is done. They have to make sure all of the parts of that 7-page contract are completed. So do yourself a favor, realtors. Don't list the things the seller has to do. Just tell me it's a price reduction, because the appraiser's job is to tell me what needs to be done, if anything, not the home inspector.
Many times let's imagine we're negotiating a color change, because that's a really good example. It does exactly what we need to for this conversation. So buyer and seller agree that the seller will paint the living room pink. Okay, sure. Whatever. That sort of a term almost would go on a personal property addendum, which
I never want to see.
No, it has nothing to do with the contract. It's completely separate. It's literally like, hey, I'm going to leave all of this personal property with the house. Okay. And you're saying, fine, I'll take it. But I'm not financing against that. So she doesn't care. Yeah.
Let me be very clear, because I've gotten several of these this year. I, as a lender, no loan originator on the fucking planet ever wants a personal property addendum. Nope. Don't send it to me. If you're new, your broker should beat you over the head if you're sending these. All you are is delaying the closing and causing more changes and more documentation.
Problems. Yeah.
Problems. Yes.
We live in an area with a lot of lakes. Boats often convey with the property. They cannot be assigned any fucking value. The house has to appraise for the value of the sale, not including the fucking boat. That's separate from real property. It's not an appurtenance. I mean, I kind of want a gold star.
Where's your award? Major award.
Word awards. Thank you.
I'm just going, throwback from last week, Rachel. Am I right or am I right?
No, 20 minutes ago when I was wearing the purple sweatshirt.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't even know if I have more examples of, because it gets a little bit tricky because
Did you
there
know?
are things that she has to see. You can't, I think this is worth saying. So hold on to your did you know. There are things I can't intentionally withhold information from the lender. I can't say, here's the contract. Oh, by the way, we have this little addendum that makes a side agreement that the buyer is going to pay the seller $20,000 cash outside the mortgage. That's fucking illegal.
Totally illegal. It's
Yes.
totally illegal. Yes, you can't do crap like that on the side. Anything dealing with monetary, it's considered an inducement to purchase and totally illegal. She
Against
can
the law.
lose her license. I can lose my license if I know about it.
Yeah.
And just omit it.
And that's, so I think it's worth saying, it's not like we get to pick and choose based on what we want, who gets to see what. Language freaking matters because words on contracts do things and they instigate other things that you may not be aware of. And showing everybody in the transaction, everything. Document would guarantee that almost no closings would ever happen.
Yes.
And
So
on top of this, I'm really sorry. There are things that Cassandra cannot say to you that I can, and there are things that I cannot say to you that she can.
So oftentimes a realtor and a lender will work in tandem so that you hear the things
that you need to hear.
And
this goes back to our teamwork episode, but sorry for talking over you twice.
No, I don't remember one of them. I do remember. So part of it, you mentioned the seller's disclosures, and I'll let you talk on that and the truthfulness behind that. I will say most realtors are unaware that I only need the seller's disclosures and the lead-based paint for, I do not need those for conventional loans. Don't send them to me. I don't need them.
Know that.
Fannie Mae doesn't need them. Freddie Mac doesn't need them.
The state requires them, just so everybody knows. That's shocking to me.
As a buyer, you are entitled to it, but
it's the end investor,
the end investor does not need them. I do not want to send them. I don't want a copy. You might need to send them to the title company. Don't send it to me. It's honestly, because if there's, say it's perfect, say there's nothing wrong with it, right? And there's nothing that would cause a red flag for an underwriter or require repair, which is most of the time. Do you know that most of the time there are initials missing and signatures missing? Did you receive this? I received this. Did you receive notification that they received it? Are you kidding me? All of those?
Can I talk about the disclosures for a minute? Because I got a couple of things to say.
Please.
So now you've got me doubting what I thought I knew to be true. So I've written a note to myself to find out if it is the state that requires it, because my practice is I am under the impression that the state requires a seller disclosure and a lead paint disclosure in order to close. And whether that's true at the state level or not, I have never closed a real estate deal with a title company without those documents. It might be my broker requiring it, but that's one thing. So let's pretend it is required. When you sell a house in the state of Michigan, my talk with my sellers goes like this. Seller disclosure, this document is required by the state and will be provided to any buyer who wants to buy your house. At minimum, it's usually actually attached to the listing, so any agent
I was going to say, it's uploaded into your MLS typically.
Oh, about 60% of the time. But that's back to the conversation on the industry. Anyway, so what the seller disclosure is a really confusing, antiquated 2-page document in my area. I've seen them out of Lansing. They're like fucking 5 pages. I got to get this out or I'll forget it. Go.
I was just going to say this is a good time for them to bring it up on the screen.
No, because I specifically want to ask for it up when I'm talking about one spot.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry.
It will come up on the screen, but what it is an antiquated document that has to work for every property, every residential property in the state. So it has things on it that, like, it asks about your antenna and rotor controls. It asks about shit that many people don't know about their house.
House vacuum.
The rule for the seller disclosure, and a lot of agents don't know this because I know for a fact that some agents fill this shit out for their clients, and that's a big, giant no-no. It is the seller's opportunity to protect themselves regarding the condition of the home. So part one is that document protects the seller. If you know, if one of the items is, has there been evidence of water in the basement? If you go in there and your basement flooded and you say, no, there's been no evidence because you cleaned it up and you refinished your basement. And
you took away the evidence.
You think it will make you look bad and you say no because you don't want people to know that it did flood, then you run the risk of the buyer buying the house, the basement floods, they call their insurance company, submit a claim, and the insurance agent can see a clue report that there was a fucking claim 18 months ago when you refinished your basement. Now that buyer has written proof that you misrepresented because you said, no, it didn't flood. And it clearly, they now have proof that you did, so you just fucking committed fraud. So my advice to my clients is always tell the truth. People would rather know that a bad thing happened and that you took care of it correctly than they would be lied to, right? So that, I mean, I know you've got things to say, so go ahead.
I was merely going to say I had just that. I had somebody purchase a home. The seller's disclosures indicated nothing with flood. The insurance agent called and said, hey, there was a flood claim paid out on this. Yes. Their premium's really high. And it was paid out like a year and a half prior. Yeah, and I went to the realtor and said, hey, just so you know, obviously we all work together towards whatever. So the buyer was like, why the fuck is my premium so high? The agent tells me there's evidence of a flood claim. I call the buyer's agent, the selling agent, whatever, and say, hey, there's evidence of a flood, but the seller's disclosure doesn't say that. Yes. What the fuck? And she goes to the other realtor and they go, oh, well, we had a flood in our kitchen, the whole kitchen remodeled, but it wasn't, it's not like it was a flood due to, we just had a pipe burst. Like
the question
you have to disclose that.
Been evidence of water in the basement, not did your basement flood? Did your sump stop working? It's literally a worded question for a reason. So,
yeah. Anyway, yeah, they should have disclosed it. And ultimately the buyer of that home did proceed, but did get a discount because the person lied and was shady and they renegotiated.
It's not always shady. There are some things that you don't know about your house. So my second advice, because I can give you general broad stroke advice. I can't help you with your actual document. The general guiding principle is if you don't know, just say you don't know. Like people will say, does your house have urethane insulation? I think is one of the questions. I don't fucking know. Like I've never cracked open my walls. I could make an educated guess based on the year built and what my dad was putting in houses at the time that I happen to know that it was rolled batting insulation. But short of cracking open my exterior walls, I have no fucking clue what's in there. So I'm not going to say, no, I don't have that. I'm going to say, I don't know. I've never looked in those walls. I didn't build the house. So
it's much easier.
So now let's bring up, we have a sample version of the documents, and I'm going to try and figure out a way to put a link because there are a couple different versions of this, but generally speaking, this is the document. Yeah, zoom right in on that third paragraph where it says instructions to the seller. You have to answer all the questions, report known conditions affecting the property. So if you know about it, you should always, always, always disclose. You can explain further with additional pages. Oh, see? I think it is state required. There's a line there that says failure to provide a purchaser with a signed disclosure statement will enable a purchaser to terminate an otherwise binding purchase agreement.
Okay, but I'm just telling you from the investor's standpoint, for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and conventional loans, they do not require disclosures.
So Cassandra doesn't need a copy, but the buyer and seller do. So this is going to refer back to
for conventional loans.
Let's take a minute and look at some of the items. You can see TV antenna, TV rotor controls, and your options are regarding any of these. Let's say we're talking about attic fans. They're not common anymore. Your answer for attic fan is yes, no, unknown, or not available. And that feels very confusing. Yeah, just read the fucking instructions. That paragraph, instructions to seller. If some items do not apply to your property, check not available. If you do not know the facts, check unknown. Those are the two most important pieces of information. to reference something Cassandra already mentioned, if you scroll down to the bottom of this document, all the way to the bottom, there is a spot for the buyer and the seller to initial. Can you go up a little bit further? Nope. Show me the bottom of the page. Nope, it's not showing. Anyway, there's a spot for seller's initials and buyer's initials. That is probably the initial I most often have to chase down in any real estate contract. And then the second page requires signatures by both parties.
My most common is missing initials on the lead-based paint form and realtor
The
initials
realtor
or
initial
signatures.
on the lead paint. Oh my God, there's a line item on
And
the realtor on the lead paint disclosure, which is a separate
yes,
document from this one, that the realtor has to initial, that they advise the seller of their legal obligation to disclose any known lead paint in the home.
yes. And I was going to say, I had an underwriter ask for a realtor's initial, and I went and found the guideline where fucking sure as shit, HUD is like, the realtors absolutely must sign this form.
And I think that also is
And
at the state level because
I get a lot of, no, that's the HUD, but then
Yeah.
the realtor replied with, I've never had anybody make me sign it before. And I go, well, just so you know, here's the rule for this FHA transaction. You actually must sign it.
so I
And
chase
she's
that
like,
down a
oh,
lot too.
I'll sign it. But I had to show her the rule, which, I'm a rule hunter and I don't mind finding it. But
I am going to find a copy because when I list a property, I tell my sellers that they have a legal obligation to disclose any firsthand knowledge of and provide any reports they may have that pertain to lead in the home. And then I have to initial that form, which is me saying I did that. The seller understands their obligation.
yeah, and it's part of the purchase contract, usually where it says the buyer has received this. And if anybody ever wants a copy of the, I don't know,
I can
the
provide
lead-based paint shit.
I think I can. So we're going to figure out a way to put a link to a downloadable seller disclosure from my Google Drive. I'll include the lead paint too.
Okay, yeah.
So,
And there's a few different versions. They all capture the same thing.
Yeah, the thing you might want to know about all the different versions is a lot of times brokers and real estate entities will just slap their fucking logo on the same document. Like,
yeah,
half of my documents have a AgentRx logo on them, and it's the same document you'd get from Remax or Coldwell or GMAR or here's what it says. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, sure. The version I pulled up doesn't have an seller's agent's acknowledgement. Agent has informed the seller of the seller's obligation under 42 USC 4582D and is aware of her responsibility to ensure compliance. That's the document that it doesn't. I don't want to say, okay, let's use this document. Let's imagine the lead paint says, yes, there's evidence of lead paint in the home. I've never seen one that says yes. They always say no. Nobody has knowledge or firsthand knowledge or reports of lead paint in the home. But let's imagine I had one that said, seller has knowledge of lead paint in the home. And then I gave that to my loan officer and my
I've had this
insurance person. What happened? Can you insure? Do you have to fucking remediate? Or do you just have to sign a paper saying you won't eat the paint chips?
No, you have to remediate for FHA. You can't buy a house with lead-based paint. You will see a condition slapped on for remediation of lead-based paint.
Really?
And I won't even get into California law because I've had to look that up before as well. It's a little spacey, but any house built before 1976 in California, you have to show proof that the lead-based paint has been remediated, even if you know of no lead-based paint.
Really?
Yes. It's almost like a toast, like the water transfer requirement, right? You can't in some.
I don't know.
It's
Toast to me is crispy bread.
Okay, so in some parts of Michigan, and I personally think this should be state law, the seller must provide the buyer with proof of a safe well and septic if the people are not on city services.
Time of sale.
So
What does
Yes,
toast
so
stand
it's called a toast in some counties. The form has different names, but some counties at the county level
for? Yeah.
require proof of fucking drinking water so you're not poisoned.
I'm literally
With
doing this on a deal
yes,
right now in Ingham County. Ingham County requires it.
yeah,
Washtenaw County. I think Shiawassee,
yep.
Livingston
But there
does
are many
not.
counties that do not require that.
What does the
So
toast stand for?
I can't remember. I think that's Berry or Allegan County. So
That's
but it's
Ryan.
the same type of test. It's basically a water test, proof
Does
of potable water and a drain field that isn't fucking
That's what I was going to say.
garbage.
Does it require the
Yeah.
septic tank and drain field evaluation
That
too? So I
yes,
know
that
that is
way.
a POS, TOS. Point
Okay.
of sale, time of sale. I've
Okay.
never
Well,
heard
it's the
toast.
same. That's how I know it as. But
How do I Google that? What is toast water test?
anyway, it's a
Simply,
certification. So I will tell you that if it's a county requirement, I can't even imagine what you came up with on
I
that
have
search.
to
But if
read
it's
this
a
to you.
hold
Finish.
on, if it's a county requirement, then I do need it.
Yes, because it shows
Typically, I
proof that
I need it.
condition was
Yeah.
met. Yeah, that condition then becomes part of the. It's inherently part of the purchase agreement. It's baked in there.
Similar
Actually.
to what is it called when like some bigger cities do it?
Yep. The
Affidavit
city
of
inspection.
the city
Occupancy.
inspection occupancy.
They've
Yeah,
got different
which
names.
yep. So
Yep.
I this is the funny thing is I don't need that, but the title company needs that. So I get that often, but I don't put it along to the underwriter because they don't need it.
There's language in the purchase agreement that says, in many cases anyway, the ones that I use and see, that says seller responsible for any required county,
Yeah.
city, or state inspections. Or it's a box you can check if you want to ask the buyer could take that on as their responsibility. Anyway, when you Google what is toast water test, here's the delightful result. Toast water, in case you are inclined to doubt its very plain spoken name, is simply water that has been flavored with steeped toast, like chamomile tea without the chamomile, or a hot toddy without anything to toddy it. It's apparently a depression remedy. Toast water
Perhaps
for all
I'll
what
make
ails
some
you.
toast water for everybody in the family. I'll use a little sourdough.
Yeah, I'm going to come to your house for Christmas toast water. Can we make that a family tradition?
Totally.
Oh my
I might
Lord.
toddy it.
It did not, in case you are wondering, provide joy and healing.
Oh,
So now we
that's
know.
too bad.
I got to know what toast stands for.
I don't know.
I'm
I'll try to look it
obsessing.
up, but I don't want to get too off track because we're talking about sellers' disclosures.
And who needs to see what and why?
And yes.
Or
And
why
so there's
not?
obviously the takeaway is please, for the love, don't just send every document.
To everybody.
Don't like literally read what you're being asked for and don't send things to anybody that you're not asked for. Although I will say, as a realtor, please send me the addendum. 2 weeks ago, I had an addendum show up literally while I was trying to balance with title for the next day.
I think you talked about this on 2 episodes ago.
And because I didn't have that addendum, the purchase price lowered, right? But it triggered a new closing disclosure and the APR changed enough to where I had to delay closing by 3 days, even though this fucking addendum was a month old. So we missed closing. We had to extend it. I did not throw the realtor under the bus, even though I really wanted to. I was just like, let's just take the pressure off of everybody and we'll just close in 3 days.
You had
I mean, I had to. Legally, I had to. Had I gotten it 3 months before, we would have been fine. Or a month before.
Knowing who needs to see what is part of the professionalism. Like if you are, I don't want to say if you're a professional, but if you're newer and you don't know, make it your business to know. Don't just give everything to everybody, and certainly don't hold on to everything and not share it, because they're like other people are waiting on your documents. And if you're a homeowner and you're using an agent or not, always ask if they need it, I guess, before you send it. One of my favorite words in this industry is hypothetically. Like hypothetically, if I had this paper that I don't actually have, what would I need to do with it? Or hypothetically, if I needed this to happen in the contract, what language helps get that done in the cleanest possible way without jeopardizing the outcome?
it will come as no surprise to you that I often get phone calls. We've had these phone calls where if people go, "Can I ask you a question?" And I say, if it's about a deal we have, definitely preface it with the word hypothetically, if someone. Just start with hypothetically.
And this points back to what you can't unsee. Because if you call me and say, "Hey, Rachel, the seller said they'll give me the boat if I buy the house for $20,000 more, and that way I'm rolling the financing of the boat into the purchase." Well, guess what? I can't do that. I know that the lender can't fucking finance that. But if you hypothetically say, the seller said they'll just leave the boat, and I don't mind if they leave it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to try and pay them $20,000 more for the house. Or I don't know. It's a ridiculous example, but.
Yeah. I once sat at a closing.
You're financing a house.
I sat at a closing.
Hold on. I can't help you buy a boat. Like, my license doesn't allow it. I can't negotiate you buying their furniture. I can't make it part of the contract because that's not where it goes. Anyway, go ahead.
I was at a closing once and everybody finished signing and the seller goes, "Okay, and so who's writing me a check?" and goes like this. And I said,
Nope.
Hold on. I said, "I don't know what you're about to do, but I need to leave the room. You have to stop talking."
Yep.
And I left the room. Like, I don't know what the fuck side agreement they had, because the fact that somebody would be getting a checkbook out to write a side check to the seller of a home at closing is a giant no-no. Like, and I don't know what it is because I didn't fucking stick around. It could have been she legitimately was paying $1,000 for a gorgeous couch or something. I don't know.
I bought something from your Pampered Chef party. I got to pay you for those little spatulas, which is totally fine.
Yeah, but it couldn't have been like reimbursement for some repair that the seller did to make it. Like, there's things that can't be, but I couldn't know what it is.
And if you had stayed and known what it was and it was a no-no, then now you have to report it.
I have to rescind the money, not disperse, and we have to go through the entire thing again. Like, seller, check yourself before you say that. Buyer, check yourself before you pay for anything on the side, and just double check what you're sending. Send only what you're being asked to send and not extra.
Yep. Know who needs to see what. Don't give everybody everything.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what our time is because there's no number on the little lighty up clock. So I'm just going to call it
up clock.
Unless you've got something else. Our contact info is in the show notes. We're also very easy to find. Rachel Evers and Cassandra Evers.
Yep, and we'll put links in the show notes to the seller's disclosures, the lead-based paint disclosures, just for reference. And if Rachel can find her bad addendum, she'll put that in too, of what it's not supposed to look like.
So I know for sure somewhere I have a paper copy, so I'll just scan a new one. Find bad addenda.
I have a bad addendum. I can redact.
Do it. Share
stuff.
Examples are always the best. Okay, so on that note, we'll see you guys next week. Yes.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
The info given is current as of this recording, but remember, the market changes and real estate is hyper local.